Jake Morrison stared out the window of his cell, watching stars drift past the alien station. 3 days ago, he had been an engineer on humanity's first deep space mission. Now he was a prisoner of the Valthian Empire, locked in a room that looked more like a fancy hotel than a jail. The Valthians had stopped his ship without warning. Their vessels appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the human exploration craft like wolves circling prey. Captain Kyle Henderson tried to explain they meant no harm, that they were just exploring. The aliens didn't care. Within an hour, Jake and his crew were transported to this massive station orbiting a purple gas giant. Jake pressed his hand against the transparent wall. The material felt warm and seemed to glow slightly under his touch. Everything here was strange and beautiful in ways that made his brain hurt. The Valthians themselves were tall, elegant beings with silver skin that shimmered with blue patterns. Their eyes were large and violet, and they moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy by comparison. He had seen dozens of them since arriving, but none had spoken to him directly. They observed the humans through cameras and scanners, treating them like interesting animals in a zoo. The translator implant the aliens gave him worked perfectly, allowing him to understand their language. Not that it mattered much. The guards barely acknowledged his existence. The door to his quarters slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Lisa Grant stepped inside, looking tired. She was the ship's tactical officer and had been trying to communicate with their captors for days. "Any luck?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "They're polite but won't tell us anything. Kyle thinks they're waiting for orders from someone higher up." "Great. So we just wait here?" "Looks like it." Lisa sat down on the strange furniture that adjusted itself to her body. "Could be worse. The food is actually pretty good." Jake managed a weak smile. Lisa was right. Their captors weren't cruel. The quarters were comfortable, the food was edible, and they weren't being tortured or experimented on. Still, being a prisoner was being a prisoner, no matter how nice the cell. Lisa left after a few minutes, and Jake found himself alone again. He tried to read some of the information files the Valthians provided about their empire. But the words blurred together. Exhaustion pulled at him. He hadn't slept well since the capture, too anxious about what would happen next. He lay down on the bed, which molded itself around him like soft clay. Within minutes, sleep took him. Jake didn't know it, but earlier that day, Princess Lyria had arrived at the station. She was the crown princess of the Valthian Empire, daughter of Emperor Theron himself. At 26 cycles old, she was brilliant, curious, and deeply bored with court life. When she heard about the captured humans, she demanded to see them. Her guards and advisors protested. The humans were primitive, possibly dangerous. But Lyria insisted. She had studied xenobiology and found other species fascinating. These humans were the first new intelligent species discovered in 200 years. She wanted to observe them personally. The station commander gave her access to all surveillance recordings. Lyria spent hours watching the humans, noting how they interacted with each other and their environment. They were so different from Valthians. Loud, emotional, expressive. Where her people were calm and controlled, these humans seemed to feel everything intensely. One human caught her attention more than the others, Jake Morrison, according to his file. An engineer and scientist. She watched him examine his quarters, touching everything with curious fingers. She noticed how he tried to figure out how things worked, his mind clearly active even in captivity. That evening, Lyria reviewed the latest recordings. She noticed Jake had fallen asleep. The recording was marked as routine, nothing interesting. But Lyria decided to watch it anyway. What she saw made her laugh for the first time in weeks. Jake was talking in his sleep. His translator implant was still active, broadcasting his dreams in perfect Valthian. At first, it was just random words, something about engines and cosmic dust. Then his mumbling became clearer. "The princess," he said. his voice soft and confused. "She's so tall, and those lights on her skin, they're like stars decided to be a person." Lyria leaned forward, her violet eyes wide with surprise. Jake continued, completely unaware he was being recorded. "I should be terrified. We're prisoners. But when she walked past earlier, I forgot to be scared. Is that stupid? That's probably stupid." He shifted in his sleep, his face scrunching up. "She looked at me for maybe 2 seconds. 2 seconds. And I'm here thinking about it like a complete idiot. Focus, Jake. Aliens. Prison. Not a good time to think about how beautiful someone is." A pause. Then, "But she really is beautiful. Even for someone who might decide humans aren't worth keeping alive. Great priorities, Morrison. Really great." The recording ended as Jake rolled over and went silent. Lyria sat back in her chair, a genuine smile on her face. In her entire life, no one had ever spoken about her like that. Every compliment she received was calculated, designed to gain favor or advantage. Court politicians praised her with empty words. Suitors from other noble families spoke of her beauty in formal, meaningless poetry. But this human, this Jake Morrison, had no idea anyone was listening. His thoughts were completely honest, unfiltered by protocol or ambition. He thought she was beautiful and felt guilty about it because of their situation. He called himself an idiot for being distracted by her appearance. It was refreshing, it was funny, it was real. Lyria made a decision. She would meet this human personally, not just observe him through cameras, but actually talk to him. Her advisors would object, but she didn't care. For the first time in months, she felt genuinely curious about someone. She stood up, her luminescent patterns glowing brighter with her excitement. Tomorrow, she would request a meeting with Jake Morrison. She couldn't wait to see his face when he realized she had heard everything. The thought made her laugh again, a sound that surprised even her guards standing outside her door. Jake woke up feeling more rested than he had in days. He stretched and looked around his cell, trying to remember his dreams. Something about the princess, maybe? The memory slipped away before he could catch it. He was eating breakfast when the door opened. A Valthian guard stood there, taller than any human Jake had ever seen. The guard's luminescent patterns pulsed with a steady blue rhythm. "Jake Morrison," the guard said through the translator. "Princess Lyria requests your presence." Jake nearly choked on his food. "The princess? Why?" "She did not share her reasons with me. You will come now." It wasn't a request. Not really. Jake stood up, his heart racing. Lisa had mentioned seeing a new group of important-looking Valthians arrive yesterday. One of them must have been the princess. But why would she want to see him specifically? The guard led him through corridors that seemed to shift and change color as they walked. Other Valthians stopped to stare at the human being escorted through their station. Jake tried to ignore their curious gazes. They arrived at a large door that slid open silently. The room beyond was beautiful. Plants from dozens of worlds grew in carefully arranged sections. A large window showed the purple gas giant in all its glory, and standing near that window was the princess. Jake recognized her immediately. He had seen her briefly the day before, walking past with her entourage. She was even more striking up close. Tall and elegant, with silver skin marked by glowing blue patterns that seemed to flow like water. Her hair was long and white, and her violet eyes studied him with obvious intelligence. "Jake Morrison," she said, her voice musical and clear. "Please, sit." Jake sat in a chair that adjusted to his smaller human frame. The princess sat across from him, a small smile on her face. "Your Highness," Jake said, not sure what else to say. "You may call me Lyria," she said. "We are alone here except for the guards outside. No need for excessive formality." "Okay, Lyria." The name felt strange on his tongue. Why did you want to see me? Lyria's smile grew wider. I wanted to meet the human who thinks my bioluminescence is like stars that decided to be a person. Very poetic for someone from a species that only just discovered faster-than-light travel. Jake felt all the blood drain from his face. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. You heard that, he said weakly. I did. The surveillance system records everything, including sleep talking. Your translator implant was active. Lyria looked genuinely amused rather than angry. You also called yourself an idiot several times, which I found entertaining. Jake wanted to disappear. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. I am so sorry. That was completely inappropriate. I didn't mean to... To be honest, Lyria interrupted. Don't apologize for honesty, Jake Morrison. It's the rarest thing in my world. Jake stared at her, confused. You're not angry? Why would I be angry? You paid me a compliment, even if you didn't intend for anyone to hear it. Lyria leaned back in her chair. Do you know how many beings have praised my appearance in my life? Thousands? And every single one of them wanted something in return. Power, position, favor, connections. But you were unconscious. You gained nothing from those words. They were simply true to you. Jake didn't know what to say. This was not how he expected this conversation to go. I've been watching your crew, Lyria continued. All of you are fascinating, so emotional, so expressive. You argue and laugh and cry. My people are much more controlled. We consider excessive emotion to be improper. Is that why you captured us? Jake asked. To study us? My people captured you because you entered restricted space. I'm here because I find you interesting. Lyria tilted her head. Tell me about Earth, about humans. For the next hour, Jake talked. At first he was nervous, choosing his words carefully. But Lyria asked questions that showed genuine curiosity. She wanted to know about human culture, history, art, everything. And she listened to his answers with complete attention. Jake found himself relaxing. He told her about Earth's oceans and mountains, about cities and forests. He explained human music and how it made people feel. He described books and movies, the idea of telling stories just for entertainment. Your people create fiction for enjoyment? Lyria seemed amazed by this. We have historical records and technical manuals, but creating false stories for pleasure, that seems strange. Stories help us understand ourselves, Jake explained. They let us explore ideas and emotions safely. They teach us lessons and make us think. Tell me one, Lyria said suddenly. What? Tell me a human story. Now, I want to hear one. Jake thought for a moment, then launched into a simplified version of an old adventure tale. A hero on a quest, facing challenges and making friends along the way. He kept it simple but tried to make it exciting. Lyria listened with complete focus, her patterns glowing brighter when the story reached tense moments. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. That was wonderful, she said softly. The hero could have given up many times but didn't, and the lesson wasn't stated directly. We had to understand it ourselves. That's the best kind of story, Jake said. Lyria stood up, and Jake realized their time was ending. I want to meet with you again, she said. I have many more questions about humanity. I'd like that, Jake admitted. Can I ask you something? Of course. What's going to happen to us? To my crew? Lyria's expression became serious. I don't know yet. That decision belongs to my father and the Imperial Council, but I will speak on your behalf. Your people deserve a chance to prove themselves. Thank you. As Jake was led back to his quarters, his mind spun. The princess had heard his embarrassing sleep-talking and thought it was funny. She wanted to learn about humans. She was going to help them. Maybe, just maybe, things weren't as hopeless as he thought. Lisa was waiting in his room when he returned. Well, she demanded. What did the princess want? Jake sat down, still processing everything. She wanted to talk about humans, about Earth, about stories. That's it? That's it. Jake smiled slightly. I think we might have made a friend, Lisa. A very important friend. Lisa looked skeptical, but hopeful. For the first time since their capture, Jake felt the same way. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake's life changed completely. Princess Lyria arranged for him to have better quarters, more freedom to move around the station, and regular meetings with her. She called him a cultural liaison, which made it all official and proper. The rest of the crew noticed the difference. Captain Kyle pulled Jake aside one morning, looking serious. Whatever you're doing with the princess, keep doing it, Kyle said. She's arranged for all of us to have more freedom. We're not exactly prisoners anymore. What are we then? Jake asked. Guests, apparently. Strange guests that nobody knows what to do with, but guests. Kyle squeezed Jake's shoulder. You've made a real connection with her. That might save all our lives. Jake met with Lyria almost every day. Sometimes they talked in her garden room. Other times, she showed him different parts of the station. She was endlessly curious about humanity, asking questions about everything from how governments worked to why humans liked pets. You keep animals in your homes for companionship? Lyria asked one day. That seems inefficient. It's not about efficiency, Jake explained. It's about connection. Dogs and cats give us affection and loyalty. They make us happy. My people don't have pets. We have purpose-bred workers for specific tasks, but not companions. Lyria looked thoughtful. Perhaps we're missing something. Jake learned about Valthian culture, too. The Empire had existed for over 3,000 years, spreading across hundreds of worlds. They were peaceful now, but only because they had conquered or absorbed every other species they encountered. Those other species were gone, either extinct or fully assimilated into Valthian society. We brought order to chaos, Lyria explained, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. Or that's what our history says. What do you think? Jake asked carefully. Lyria was quiet for a moment. I think we brought order, yes. But we also brought stagnation. Nothing changes in the Empire. Everything is planned, organized, controlled. Innovation is discouraged. New ideas are suspicious. We're so obsessed with maintaining what we have that we've stopped growing. Jake started to understand why Lyria was so interested in humans. His people represented everything hers had lost. Chaos, creativity, constant change. Humanity was messy and imperfect, but they never stopped trying new things. One afternoon, Lyria brought him to see a Valthian engineering problem. A power converter wasn't working properly, and their technicians couldn't figure out why. Jake studied it for a few minutes, then suggested they reverse the polarity of two components. The Valthian engineers looked shocked. That's not in the manual, one said. Try it anyway, Jake urged. They did. The converter immediately started working perfectly. How did you know? Lyria asked, amazed. I didn't, Jake admitted. I guessed. Sometimes human engineers just try things to see what happens. We call it thinking outside the box. But what if your guess had been wrong? Then we'd try something else. Jake shrugged. That's how we learn, by making mistakes and fixing them. Lyria's patterns glowed bright with excitement. Your people experiment. You accept failure as part of progress. Well, yeah. How else would we improve? My people follow established procedures. We avoid risk. We maintain stability. Lyria touched the converter gently. But maybe we've become too cautious. Maybe that's why nothing new ever happens. Jake saw how frustrated she was. The Valthian Empire was rich and powerful, but it was stuck. Everyone followed the rules, did what was expected, never questioned anything. It sounded awful to Jake, who had grown up in a society that celebrated rebels and mavericks. "Tell me more about Earth's history," Lyria said during another meeting. "How did humans go from primitive tribes to space travelers?" Jake told her about human history. The good parts and the bad. Wars and peace, dictators and democrats, famines and plenty. He didn't hide the ugly truth. Humans had done terrible things to each other throughout history. "But you survived," Lyria said. "You learned from your mistakes. Sometimes, not always fast enough. But yeah, eventually we learned." Jake leaned back. "We're not perfect. We still argue and fight and mess things up, but we keep trying to be better. My people think humans are primitive because you still have conflicts," Lyria said. "But maybe conflict isn't always bad. Maybe it means you're still growing, still challenging yourselves." "I never thought of it that way, but yeah, maybe." Lyria showed him recordings of Imperial Council meetings. Jake watched Valthian officials drone on about regulations and protocols. Nothing ever seemed to get decided. Everyone was too worried about following proper procedure. "This is every meeting," Lyria said with clear frustration. "Hours of talk, no action. My father tries to change things, but the council resists. Change is dangerous to them. Change means uncertainty." "Uncertainty is where progress lives," Jake said. "You can't discover anything new if you only do what's safe." Lyria looked at him with something like hope. "Do you really believe one person can make a difference?" "Every major change in human history started with someone saying, 'This isn't good enough,'" Jake said. "One person with courage and a good idea can change everything. Look at the people who invented flight, or computers, or faster-than-light travel. They were all told it was impossible. And they did it anyway. They did it anyway." Lyria was quiet for a long time. Jake could almost see her thinking, planning. She was brilliant and powerful, but she'd been taught to follow rules and respect tradition. Now she was learning that rules could be questioned and traditions could change. One evening, Lyria took Jake to an observation deck. They stood together watching stars drift past, two beings from different worlds sharing a quiet moment. "Thank you," Lyria said softly. "For what? For being honest? For sharing your stories? For showing me that there's more than one way to live?" She turned to face him, her violet eyes serious. "I want to help your people, Jake. I want Earth and the Valthian Empire to work together. But there are others who see humans as a threat." "What kind of threat?" "A threat to the order they've maintained for centuries. You humans ask questions, take risks, try new things. If my people see that, they might start asking questions too. Some officials don't want that." Jake felt a chill. "So what happens now?" "Now I fight for you," Lyria said with determination. "I'm not just a princess. I'm heir to the Empire. It's time I started acting like it." Jake smiled at her. "I believe in you." "Sleep-talking aside, you're quite brave for a prisoner," Lyria said, her patterns glowing with amusement. Jake laughed, and for the first time since being captured, he felt genuine hope. Maybe humans and Valthians could find common ground. Maybe Lyria could change her empire. Maybe everything would work out. He just hoped they'd have enough time to make it happen. Everything changed when High Commander Vorak arrived at the station. Jake first heard about him from a worried Valthian guard who had become friendly with the human crew. Vorak was powerful, traditional, and completely opposed to any contact with humans. He commanded a large portion of the Imperial fleet and had the support of conservative council members. "He's here to inspect the human prisoners," the guard whispered. "Be careful. He doesn't see you as people. To him, you're problems that need solving." Jake immediately went to find Lyria. She was in a meeting, but when she saw his face, she dismissed her advisors. "What's wrong?" "Vorak is here. What does that mean for us?" Lyria's patterns flickered dark blue, a sign of stress. "It means my father is being pressured. Vorak wants you declared dangerous and placed in permanent containment. Prison. He wants us in prison forever. Or worse. Lyria paced the room. There are facilities where they keep dangerous species. Isolated, studied, controlled, never released. Jake felt sick. Can he do that? If he convinces the council, yes. Lyria stopped pacing and looked at Jake directly. I won't let that happen. I'm invoking the law of provincial citizens. What's that? An ancient law that allows royal family members to claim beings from newly contacted species as citizens under their personal protection. If I claim you and your crew, Vorak can't touch you without going through me first. Won't that put you in danger? Probably. Lyria smiled grimly. But that's the point of being a princess. Sometimes you have to use your power to protect people who can't protect themselves. The next day, Lyria formally announced her decision before a gathering of station officials and visiting council members. High Commander Vorak stood near the front, his expression cold and angry. I claim these humans as provincial citizens under my protection, Lyria declared. They will be treated as guests of the Empire, not prisoners. Vorak stepped forward immediately. Your Highness, this is highly irregular. These beings are unknown variables. They could be dangerous. They've been here for weeks without causing any problems, Lyria countered. They're primitive. Look at their history. War, conflict, violence. They'll bring chaos to our ordered society. Or they'll bring new ideas and fresh perspectives. Lyria's voice was steady and strong. I've studied these humans extensively. They're intelligent, creative, and capable of remarkable things. They're inferior, Vorak said flatly. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their culture is crude. They have no place in our empire. The room murmured with agreement. Jake, watching from the side with his crew, felt anger rise in his chest. Inferior? Crude? Maybe humans didn't have technology as advanced as the Valthians, but that didn't make them worthless. Vorak continued his argument. Princess, with respect, you're young and inexperienced. You don't understand the danger these creatures represent. If we accept them as equals, what message does that send? That any primitive species can demand our attention and resources. They're not demanding anything, Lyria said. They were exploring space, just as our ancestors once did. We captured them. We brought them here. The least we can do is treat them fairly. Fair? Vorak's voice dripped with contempt. They have no rights in our empire. They're not citizens. They're specimens. Something snapped in Jake. Before he could think about it, he stepped forward. We're not specimens, he said loudly. The room went silent. Everyone turned to stare at the human who dared speak. Vorak's eyes narrowed. You will be silent, creature. No. Jake's heart pounded, but he kept talking. You want to know about humans? Fine. Yes, we've had wars. Yes, we've made terrible mistakes. We're not perfect. But you know what? We learn. We grow. We keep trying to be better. Irrelevant, Vorak said dismissively. Is it? You talk about how advanced you are, how ordered and peaceful, but when's the last time your empire invented something new? When's the last time anything changed? Jake looked around at the assembled Valthians. You've had peace for 1,000 years because you crushed everyone else and then stopped moving forward. We've had conflict because we never stopped questioning, never stopped trying to improve. Which civilization is truly advanced? The one that's stagnant and afraid of change, or the one that's still growing? The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Several officials looked outraged. A few looked thoughtful. You dare criticize our empire? Vorak demanded. I'm telling the truth. Princess Lyria taught me that honesty is valuable. Jake glanced at Lyria, who was watching him with obvious pride. Humans aren't perfect, but we have something to offer. Creativity, adaptability, the willingness to take risks and try new things. You could learn from us. Just like we can learn from you. But that only works if you see us as equals, not as problems. Vorak stepped closer to Jake, towering over him. You're nothing but noise and chaos. Your species has existed for mere thousands of years. Ours has endured for ages. Endured, Jake repeated. Not thrived, not grown. Endured. He straightened his spine, refusing to back down. You're right that humans are young. But young things grow. They adapt. They surprise you. Maybe that scares you. Maybe the idea of something unpredictable in your ordered world is terrifying, but fear isn't a good reason to lock us away. The room was completely quiet now. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. I propose an alternative, Jake continued. Let us prove ourselves. Give us a chance to show what humans can do. Let us work with you, learn from you, teach you what we know. If we fail, if we prove to be as dangerous as you think, then make your decision. But give us that chance. That's all we ask. Lyria spoke up. I support this proposal. Let the humans demonstrate their value through cooperation and exchange. Several council members began talking at once. Some supported the idea. Others rejected it immediately. The argument grew heated. Finally, a new voice silenced everyone. Enough! Emperor Theron entered the room, and every Valthian immediately bowed. Jake followed their lead, lowering his head respectfully. I've been listening, the Emperor said. High Commander Vorak, you make valid points about caution and tradition. Princess Lyria, your compassion does you credit. And you, human, showed courage speaking before this gathering. Jake held his breath. I've watched the surveillance recordings of these humans for weeks, Theron continued. I've seen their interactions, their behavior, their character. I've also watched our empire grow comfortable and complacent. Perhaps too comfortable. Vorak started to speak, but Theron raised a hand for silence. I'm granting the humans provisional freedom. They will remain as ambassadors and cultural liaisons. They will be monitored, but not imprisoned. In 6 months, we'll evaluate whether this arrangement should continue. The Emperor looked directly at Jake. Prove yourselves worthy of trust. We will, Your Majesty, Jake said. Vorak looked furious but couldn't argue with the Emperor's direct order. He bowed stiffly and left the room. After the meeting ended, Lyria found Jake. That was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid, she said. Yeah, I know. Jake felt shaky now that the adrenaline was wearing off. But I couldn't just stand there. I'm glad you didn't. You said things that needed saying. Lyria's patterns glowed warm gold. Now we have our chance. Let's not waste it. The next 3 months passed quickly. Jake and his crew threw themselves into proving humans were worth knowing. Captain Kyle negotiated formal agreements with Valthian officials. Lisa helped train station security in human tactics and thinking. Jake worked with Lyria on cultural exchange programs and joint research projects. But High Commander Vorak hadn't given up. He was looking for any excuse to prove the humans were dangerous. One night, alarms woke Jake from sleep. Lights flashed red throughout his quarters. He rushed into the corridor and found chaos. Valthians running everywhere, shouting about a station malfunction. Part of the environmental system was failing. If it wasn't fixed soon, entire sections would lose life support. Jake found Captain Kyle and Lisa gathering with other crew members. What happened? Jake asked. Don't know yet, Kyle said. But I've got a bad feeling about this. That feeling got worse when Vorak appeared on communication screens throughout the station. A human sabotage device has been found in the environmental controls, he announced. The humans have attacked us. That's a lie, Jake shouted, but nobody was listening. Valthian guards surrounded the human crew, weapons ready. They were marched to a holding area while engineers worked to fix the environmental system. Jake's mind raced. Someone had planted evidence to frame them. Someone who wanted the humans gone. Vorak, Lisa said quietly. Has to be. But how do we prove it? Kyle asked. Jake knew there was only one person who might help them. I need to talk to Princess Lyria. The guards won't let you anywhere near her, Lisa said. Then I'll have to convince them. It took an hour of arguing, but finally Jake was allowed to contact Lyria. She appeared on a video screen, her face serious. Jake, they're saying you attacked the station. We didn't. Someone planted that device. Lyria, you know us. You've spent months with us. Would we do something like this? Lyria was quiet for a long moment. No, you wouldn't. But proving that won't be easy. Vorak has evidence. Evidence can be faked. Help me check the security recordings. There has to be something. Lyria nodded slowly. I'll access the files. But Jake, if we're wrong, if you really did this, I can't protect you anymore. We didn't do it, I promise. For the next several hours, Jake and Lyria went through security footage. They looked at every recording from the past week, searching for anything suspicious. Finally, Jake spotted something. There. That maintenance worker entering the environmental control room. Can you enhance that? Lyria zoomed in on the image. The worker's identification badge was slightly wrong. The numbers didn't match station records. That's not a real maintenance worker, Lyria said. Someone disguised themselves. They traced the fake worker's movements backward through the station. The person had been careful, but not perfect. Eventually, they found footage of the fake worker entering a section of the station restricted to high-ranking military personnel. Vorak's section, Jake said. He set this up. We need more evidence, Lyria warned. Vorak is powerful. We need absolute proof. They kept digging. Jake used his knowledge of human investigative techniques, while Lyria used her understanding of Valthian systems. Together, they uncovered communications between Vorak and several other officials, plans to discredit the humans, references to creating an incident. This is a conspiracy, Lyria said, stunned. Vorak isn't working alone. He has support from dozens of officials who want things to stay exactly as they are. Because change scares them, Jake said. We represent change. New ideas, new possibilities. That's dangerous to people who benefit from how things are now. Lyria compiled all the evidence into a report. Then she did something that shocked Jake. She called for an emergency session of the Imperial Council and demanded her father attend. The session was held immediately. The council chambers were packed with officials, military commanders, and nobles. Vorak stood near the front, looking confident. He thought he'd won. Emperor Theron took his place at the head of the council. High Commander Vorak has presented evidence of human sabotage. Princess Lyria has requested to speak. We will hear her. Lyria stepped forward, Jake beside her. She presented their findings calmly and clearly. The fake worker, the forged identification, the communications between conspirators. Everything pointed to Vorak staging the entire incident. Vorak tried to defend himself. These are lies, manipulated data. Then explain this, Lyria said, displaying a recording they'd found. It showed Vorak meeting with the fake worker, handing over the sabotage device. The room exploded with noise. Vorak's face went dark with rage. You can't trust these humans! They've poisoned your mind, Princess! They've opened my eyes, Lyria shot back, to how stagnant we've become, to how afraid we are of anything new, to how far some will go to maintain their power. Emperor Theron stood. The room fell silent immediately. High Commander Vorak, you and your co-conspirators are under arrest. You will face trial for attempted sabotage, false accusation, and conspiracy against the Empire. Guards moved to take Vorak into custody. He struggled, but was led away. The Emperor turned to Jake and the human crew. You have proven yourselves not only innocent, but valuable. You helped expose corruption at the highest levels of our government. The Valthian Empire owes you a debt. We just want peace between our peoples, Captain Kyle said. "A chance to learn from each other." "You'll have it. I'm officially recognizing Earth as an independent sovereign world. Full diplomatic relations will be established." Theron looked at his daughter with obvious pride. "Princess Lyria will serve as our primary liaison to humanity. She's shown wisdom beyond her years." Over the following weeks, everything changed. The conspirators were tried and punished. Emperor Theron announced reforms to encourage innovation and new ideas. The rigid traditions that had held the Empire back for centuries began to loosen. Jake and his crew were offered the choice to return to Earth or stay as ambassadors. Most wanted to go home, but Jake chose to stay. He had work to do here, helping build bridges between humans and Valthians. One evening, 6 months after their capture, Jake sat with Lyria in her garden room. They were reviewing plans for a joint research station where humans and Valthians would work together on scientific projects. "This is going to change everything," Lyria said, studying the plans with excitement. "Think of what we can accomplish together. Your people have the technology and resources. Ours have the creativity and flexibility. It's a good combination." Jake looked at her. "You did it, you know. You changed your empire." "We did it," Lyria corrected. "I wouldn't have had the courage without you, without your stories about humans who stood up and made a difference." They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Jake felt his eyes growing heavy. He'd been up late the night before, preparing reports for the Earth government. "You should rest," Lyria said, noticing his exhaustion. "Just a few more minutes," Jake mumbled. But his eyes closed anyway. Lyria smiled as she heard his breathing slow. After a moment, his translator activated again, picking up his sleep-talking. "Lyria's ridiculous standards," he mumbled. "How does she expect me to finish 3 reports by morning? She's crazy." A pause. Then, "Crazy brilliant. Best thing that ever happened to humanity. And she still glows like stars." Lyria laughed softly, the same genuine laugh she'd had when she first heard him months ago. But this time it wasn't just amusement. It was affection, respect, and friendship. She draped a blanket over Jake's sleeping form and returned to her work. Through the window, human and Valthian ships docked together, crews mixing freely. It was a new era for both their peoples. And it had all started because an alien princess heard a human talking about her in his sleep and decided to laugh instead of getting angry. Sometimes the smallest moments changed everything. Lyria understood that now. She glanced at Jake one more time, still smiling. "You humans and your honest dreams?" she whispered, then turned back to planning their shared future. Outside, the stars shone bright with possibility.